Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing us to come in and come to your meeting today and share some information with you. It makes us very happy to be able to do this, and we appreciate the invitation. We wanted just maybe about half an hour of your time this morning to talk about the General Workers' Compensation Program, to give you some information about some new things coming down the pipe, and also to talk about some tips for teamwork, some things that our staff has thought about that maybe can help us help you a little bit better in helping our injured and workers. I wanted to let you know our overall customer satisfaction survey last year was our best ever. It was 96%. And so we always look forward every year after the end of the fiscal year to get feedback from agencies and understand what we can do to do a better job for you. But we were very pleased last year because that's one of our key measures to have achieved 96% on a, that means 96% rated a 6 or higher on a 10-point scale. One of our other key measures for the program is our return to work rate. For 3 years running now, the overall return to work rate for the Commonwealth was 99%, which is a phenomenal rate. And those efforts from our MedVoc people, from the return to work unit, from our claims staff, but most importantly from our agencies, have all contributed to that just phenomenal return to work rate. Over 98% return to work to the same employer, and about 0.4% return to work to a different employer. Those are awesome results, and everyone who is participating in this deserves a kudo for getting employees back to work early and safely. One of our key measures that we are going to be adding, or we have just added, is now to turn our attention to reducing lost work days. As long as the employee stays out, of course, we're paying lost work wages and indemnity on those claims, and the longer that goes on, of course, the greater your experience with that particular claim. So now we want to turn our attention to how can we get our employees back to work more quickly, yet safely. So we have established a report, and we have laid down a baseline that we have just calculated, and we'll be having some new information coming out, some new tools coming out, some new training materials coming out in the near future to help us now turn our attention to reducing the number of days that people are out on lost work indemnity claims. One of the other key measures for our program is the statewide modification rate. Our premiums are calculated every other year. They were calculated last year for 2013-2014 fiscal years. The statewide modification factor is 1.18, and what that is a multiplier, and it represents how we compare to other similar employers nationally. So at 1.18, that increases the state's overall premium because it would multiply. 1 is the norm, so if a modification factor is a 1, it neither increases nor decreases your premiums. Anything above 1 increases, anything below 1 decreases. So VDH deserves a huge drum roll because VDH's modification factor is 0.90. That means your premiums are reduced because you have performed so well compared to other similar employers. So you deserve a huge round of applause and huge kudos for those results. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you about some new things that we're doing in workers' comp. One of those is distance learning. We have a large number of people today joining us through distance meeting. We have tried to leverage that to be able to offer our training programs to more and more people throughout the state. So what we're doing is offering the training courses live in Richmond because we tend to get a larger audience in Richmond just because of the density of state employees here. But we're also broadcasting those through iLink, and we've so far gotten a good response to that. And so agency staff members across the state can take advantage of our training programs without actually having to leave to travel to go to a site to receive training. Even though we had been sending our training people out across the state for years, we had noticed dwindling numbers, and what we were hearing was, one, there was no budget for travel, regardless of how far it was, and two, because of staffing levels, people really didn't have the ability to allow their staff to travel to go to training, even if they had the budget for training. So those are all available in the... Did someone want a question?
I'm sorry, somebody has their microphone open?
Sorry, we just got reconnected. Our Polycom went down.
Okay, thank you.
At any rate, all of our classes are listed in the Knowledge Center, the State Knowledge Center, and are available. One thing you might want to be aware of if you aren't already, the Knowledge Center will be going down and is not going to be available for registration for the entire month of June as DHRM converts to the new product. So you can go out to the Knowledge Center and just check for all classes that are starting with DHRM-WC. Those are all of our classes. I understand that we have a good mix of HR people and safety people, environmental safety people here today. One thing that the HR people would probably be interested to know is we are, again, offering the SHRM certification course this fall. Bob Vilchek joined our program when the PDS program was eliminated from DHRM. Bob continues to teach the SHRM course, and we will be offering that again this year, and that again will be offered through distance learning. We did that for the first time last year, and it went very well. That should be out on the Knowledge Center, I would think, next week. Those are being entered tomorrow. Other newsworthy things for a program, our RFP goes out for bids sometime this fall. We're in the middle of writing our new RFP. Most of you probably know our program is outsourced. It's been outsourced since 1998, and MCI has been a successful bidder since 1998. But the program goes out for bids every 5 years. And so that will be a coming attraction. What I hope to do between now and mid to late summer is to hold some focus groups with our agencies to get some feedback from you of services that you might like to see provided that we don't currently offer, so that we can see if we can find a cost-effective way to do that. And then the last thing that's a coming attraction that we're working on, some of you may be aware of the government reform task forces that were convened last year. One of those was on Commonwealth Insurance, and I was asked to participate with that. Sarah Redding Wilson, who's DHRM's agency head, was the chair, and I was fortunate to be able to participate with her. One of the recommendations that came out of that task force was to develop a disability one-stop for the reporting of all types of disability, whether it was workers' comp, whether it was short-term, long-term disability for OC and non-OC, or whether it was FMLA. So we're going to be working on that pretty heavily this summer. Michelle Allen, who's the statewide disability manager, is going to be leading that effort. Again, we'll be putting together some focus groups from agencies and also from employees to get some feedback on how we can make this work in a more efficient way. And the idea is to place it in an employee portal, and it's probably going to reside in Employee Direct because that already exists and we already have some things in that. But we're thinking that in Employee Direct there would be a portal where an employee could log in and report their disability. And then the portal would be smart enough to get it where it needs to go. It would need to go to the agency. It would need to go to us. It would need to go to Unum. All those are details that we'll be working on this summer to try and make that happen. But we were thinking it would encourage prompter reporting. It would create a statewide data warehouse of information for trending purposes, and it would make things easier for employees. And we will also be working on ways that we can help employees who either are not literate with computers or have no computer access, so that they will also be able to access the employee portal, but that theirs may be a telephonic means of doing it. But coming attraction. I wanted to turn now to teamwork. We have been recently sending out what we call tips for teamwork. So we think that it's a good thing to be able to get information out on how we can all work better to serve our injured workers. One of the topics that's come up with VDH recently has to do with bloodborne pathogen exposures. I know that Jeff has had some conversations with different regions, and I know that Bob is planning to talk briefly about your own internal protocol today, but I wanted to just briefly touch base on that because I know it's been a source of conversation. There are requirements for employers under OSHA, and those are OSHA standards. Bloodborne pathogens is one of those standards that has requirements for employers. Those standards don't equate to workers' compensation laws. Workers' compensation is meant to be a compromise between employers and employees. It removes tort from the scenario and produces a program that provides benefits without increasing the liability for the employer through tort. And so the workers' compensation laws are written so that employers are required to provide coverage for occupational diseases and injuries by accident. And so with a bloodborne pathogen exposure, until there's been a diagnosis of disease, in rare cases, we might have some requirement because of the kind of disease it is. Say we know we have an exposure to hepatitis or HIV or some other kind of really life-threatening bad disease. In those cases, we might be required to pay for treatment in advance of a diagnosis of disease, but in most cases, we are not under workers' comp. Our program I have made an administrative decision to pay for baseline testing under the workers' compensation claim on all exposure claims. And that's all we pay until we know whether or not we have a positive source or if the person actually converts to having the active disease. And I wanted to explain the reason why we did that. We're not required to do it, but we're doing it because it's a best practice for the program and because it is in our best interest to know what the status of the employee who was exposed was at the time of the exposure. There are some diseases, and I'm sure many of you know that if the employee shows a positive status at the time that they have a new exposure, they've already been exposed because the lead time for the development of some diseases is quite a bit longer. So it's in our best interest to know what the status of the employee was at the time of the exposure. But then we stop until it becomes a claim that we need to make payment on. And so I know there's been a little bit of confusion. I know Jeff has had conversations, and I know Bob's going to go through the procedure internally for a VDH. The other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly was accident investigation. Our claim staff is going to talk a little bit about why it's so important to them to do good, prompt accident investigations. What I wanted to let you know was there are a lot of resources out in the Knowledge Center and on our website that are available to you to help with accident investigations. There are some on-demand online training programs for supervisors and for agencies on how to go about conducting an accident investigation, what's important. There are some sample accident investigation forms. There's a lot of resources that are available. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry Brown and to Nell McCarty, who are with our claims staff, and they're going to talk a little bit from a claims perspective about why accident investigations are important and what kinds of things specifically they need and why. So Sherry and Nell.